Hello and welcome everybody to our Topic Tuesday webinar. We're excited that you're joining us today. We're going to be talking all about financial aid and paying for college, which is a big conversation piece that we know a lot of students have, and you as a counselor or teacher may have questions about. So we're excited that you're joining us today. We're going to be talking about all things how to pay for college. So as people join the webinar, we have a few housekeeping reminders. Because we're in webinar mode, everyone is on mute, so we can't see or hear you, but you can communicate with us two ways. You can put your technical questions or responses to the panelists if they ask questions in the chat. In the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, if you'll drop your questions in there, we'll be answering those live to address anything specific that you guys may want to know. So to get us started and get us familiar with the platform, we got an entry question. This is people are joining the webinar today. If you'll put in the chat feature at the bottom of your screen, what questions do you have about the college financial aid process? So we know that there are a lot of questions that you may be getting as a teacher or counselor from students, or maybe you're a parent who is also in that role and have questions yourself, or just want some clarification. If you've been in this role for a little while, maybe updating on things, as we've been doing a webinar series throughout the fall. We've had different updates, and some include the Mississippi financial aid. So we'll be touching on a variety of sources of financial aid today. But if you have any specific questions that you want to start out with, then we'll make sure that our presenter sees. One question that we've had come in the chat is how do students get their super scores from ACT, which we can discuss that as well, since super scoring is now a factor in paying for college. So Christy, we will definitely make sure and address that in the presentation. Thank you. Anybody else that has joined us this morning that has any specific questions, just to kind of get you familiar with the platform? We have the chat feature at the bottom, which is how you can communicate to the panelists. And then the Q&A feature is as the presentation's going, if you'll get those questions in the Q&A, we'll make sure that our presenter addresses those live in the Q&A time. So we'll go ahead and get going.
All right, well, good morning and welcome to the webinar. I'm Shannon Grimsley, Director of State Outreach for the Woodward Hines Education Foundation and the Get to College program. We are recording today's session and will send the link to anyone who is registered. For those watching the recording, today's date is November 17th, 2020, and the material in this webinar is current through the 2021 school year. In today's session, Financial Aid 101, you will hear from Charlie Herrington, our Assistant Director of Outreach at the North Mississippi Get to College office. He will be sharing all things financial aid and how to navigate the financial aid process with your students. I will now share a little background on Get to College and a few logistics about the webinar before we get started. Get to College is a nonprofit program of the Woodward Hines Education Foundation. We have 3 centers in Mississippi, one in Jackson, Ocean Springs, and South Haven. And we help parents, students, and high school counselors with all aspects of the college planning and financial aid process. And of course, all of our services are free. In our centers, we offer personalized college counseling appointments where we can tell students when to apply for admission and scholarship, help fill out their FAFSA, or advise on essay writing and interviewing. For the fall semester, we are offering all of our services in a virtual manner. This will include the counselor webinar series that you're participating in today and all other professional development opportunities, student and parent workshops, remote FAFSA completion, and two-way text messaging. During the webinar, as Kirsten said, we cannot see or hear you, but you can ask us questions through the instant messenger or chat at any time. So here's our agenda for the day. We will be hearing from Charlie, like I said, for the Financial Aid 101 presentation. After that, we will certainly have time to answer any of your questions. So feel free to keep adding those throughout the webinar. And if we don't get them addressed in the presentation, we'll answer those at the end. And then at the very end, we'll go over upcoming webinars and professional development opportunities for you. So Kirsten Dufour, who you heard from earlier, our Assistant Director and Project Manager, will be replying to the Q&A today. We will have time for the live Q&A at the end, but feel free, like I said, to message your questions at any time. So I will now turn it over to Charlie Herrington for our presentation, and he's going to share his screen with us and begin.
All right, good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a great day so far. As Shannon just told you guys, my name is Charlie Herrington, and I'm the Assistant Director of Outreach at the North Mississippi Get to College Center in South Haven. And I see we've already got some questions about super scoring, which is great because we're going to start by talking about the ACT. So this is mostly going to be about financial aid and how your students can receive financial aid at different schools and from private organizations and the federal government. And we're going to talk about all that good stuff. But before we can really dive into financial aid, we need to talk about testing, because the reality is a lot of your students' money is going to be dependent on their credentials. You know, it's going to be dependent on the ACT and their GPA and those types of things. So for starters, our questions that we've had so far. And I see that Kirsten has answered it. So if you guys look in the chat, there's some reference about super scoring, but to my knowledge, currently the ACT is planning on handling everything when it comes to super scoring and getting it sent to each college. And it's going to be implemented into their portal, but it hasn't been yet. So they're planning on getting that added, and hopefully their goal is this year. I mean, they've already published that they're going to be super scoring for this year. So they're planning on getting that worked out where everything is set and ready to roll. And the student doesn't really have to do much. It's all going to be done on the back end by the ACT. It's going to have their super score on their score report. Everything's going to be, you know, taken care of. So essentially, you really won't have to do much. Now, what can you do? You know, as a camp counselor, teacher, parent, you can encourage your students to keep their score reports, you know how to access them, know how to log into their portal and to find each score. So that way they can kind of keep tabs on it. And that way, if things don't quite work out with the ACT side of things, at least they can show that to a college. Maybe just even take a picture of each one of those reports as they're coming through. So you just have a log of where you're at and what you're doing and those types of things. That way you don't have to scramble and try to find all of that. So another question that we had in chat was, which colleges, do we have a list of colleges that are going to be super scoring for the ACT? And yes, we do. If you would like that, I have a list of all of those colleges, and I'm sure that we can add my email address to chat. But my email address is my first initial and my last name. You can see it on the screen there. And Kirsten just added it for you guys. It's cherrington@gettocollege.org. So if you would like that list of colleges that are super scoring and how colleges are handling the pandemic, please feel free to email me and I can get you that link, get you that list sent over so you can see exactly which schools are. Now, what I will say is that's going to be a list for the state of Mississippi. We don't have the schools across the United States. That would be an enormous task. So we don't have that, but we do have across Mississippi who's doing what. So to our knowledge, we've reached out to each and every school, their recruiters, their financial aid offices, and we have a pretty comprehensive view of what Mississippi is doing when it comes to super scoring, as well as other things with the pandemic. So please feel free to reach out to me for that. All right, so jumping into ACT, study tools and resources. Get to College has you covered. If you are not familiar with our ACT resources, they are expansive. We have full-on student workshops that your students can join, and those workshops happen on Saturday mornings. The next one is going to be in December, the first Saturday of December. And then we're also doing Facebook Lives. So I've got 2 Facebook Lives already recorded. So go to the Get to College Facebook page, find that ACT Prep Live. And then I'm doing another live one December 1st. So I think that's Tuesday, December the 1st. So that's coming up soon. But those are our student versions. And so it gives them a chance. On Saturday mornings, they have 4 hours to learn everything that they want to know about the ACT. For my sessions, they're only 1 hour. So it's a very quick hitting, high level. This is what you really need to know to get started for ACT prep. But if you really want all of our tips and strategies, you're going to want to attend one of those Saturday sessions Or you can also check out our YouTube page. So the Get to College YouTube page has a full student presentation, a full student workshop from start to finish, whether it's just the intro and talking about what the ACT is, to each of the 4 subject areas. And so your students can really dive in. If they just need math, they can just get math. If they want to watch the entire 3 or 4 hours, then by all means, go for it. I know that students usually don't want to sit for 4 hours at a time and watch 4 hours of YouTube videos, but that's why we have it broken down. So it's about 30 minutes for each video, which I think is pretty good. So definitely check that out. Other places to find ACT prep. So the ACT Academy, if you're not familiar with that, the ACT Academy is a free resource through the ACT. So this is their official test prep. And it's got a lot of the questions from your preparing for the ACT booklets. So for any of my counselors that are on here today, you probably receive those free preparing booklets. Those are great resources for students. And if you're not a counselor today, if you're a teacher or a parent, you definitely are a community member, you want to make sure that you can find those free booklets. Hey, guess what? We've got those on our website too. So again, like I said, Get to College has you covered in just about every way possible. But those are great because they have all of the answers in the back. So you don't want to let your students know that right away, but they've got all the answers in the back so they can check every single question from start to finish. It's a great resource. But like I said, ACT Academy has videos, and then it asks a lot of those same questions, but it will kind of explain the answers to them a little bit. Khan Academy, honestly, I don't think it's as great for ACT prep. It's more subject area tutoring in a way. So it's great for the SAT. It's great if you're struggling in Algebra 1 or you're struggling in your geometry class. That's where Khan Academy really steps in and shines. You can use it for ACT prep, but it's more just teaching you concepts. If you've forgotten what Pythagorean theorem is and how to use it, then that's where Khan Academy can come in, because they can really help you dive into that concept. Test information release is great. Test information release, this happens 3 times a year with the ACT. You pay an extra $20 and you get the full test. You get the test, you get all of your answers, and you get all of the correct answers. So you can see, your student can see exactly where they messed up, and they can see, okay, this was a careless mistake. I know I can get that question right if I just pay attention to what I'm doing. Or this one is extremely difficult and I missed it. I knew I was going to miss it, and I don't know if I'll ever know how to do that. So I'm just going to count that one as a loss. So your student can really plan accordingly and figure out where they can, turn their weaknesses into strengths. So I think it's a great resource. It's about $22. It fluctuates. It's like $20 to $25. I think this year it's like $21 or $22 for test information release. Again, it happens 3 times a year. Typically it's April, June, and December. So I think they should be doing that for this December test. All right. We talked about the free ACT prep test. The real ACT prep guide, you got to buy that. That's the big red book. It's got 2 or 3 different practice tests in there. It's good. It's great. What I like to go with it is the ACT Black Book. The ACT Black Book goes along with the red book, and it's kind of the behind the scenes of the ACT. And so it's for your upper level students, or it's for you as a counselor or a teacher to really understand the backbone of the ACT, and to really understand the tricks and the traps and what they try to trick students with. That's what I use a lot when I'm really diving into my ACT prep, because the red book and those practice books, yes, you can get the answers, but you don't get good explanations. The black book will say, this is the right answer, but here are the 3 wrong answers, and here's why they are wrong. Here's trap number 1, here's trap number 2, and then they list out all of that. It's awesome. I think it's a great book. Yes, you got to buy it, but I promise it'll pay for itself, because you're going to be able to help a lot of students with it. And then again, I mentioned our YouTube channel. We think that's an amazing resource. One that's not here, one that's not on here. Another one of my favorite places for ACT prep. It's a company called Prep Scholar Blogs, or Prep Scholar. And so they have blogs. If you go to Google, just type in Prep Scholar Blogs in whichever section you want to look at. And they have tons of different articles that have been written. Prep Scholar is an expensive program, but all of their blogs are free. Okay, so that's the most important thing, is that if you're going to tell this to your students, you want to make sure that you tell them that they need to go to the blogs and not go pay for the full resource, because it does get very expensive. But all of their blogs, as of right now, are all free, so use them to your advantage. So that's a little bit about ACT. We'll talk about how your ACT score can get you scholarship dollars. We'll do that in just a minute. Before we hit that, we're going to cover essays and resumes a little bit. With resumes, honestly, the paper resume is kind of a dying art form these days. Everything is going digital, and they're running all of these digital resumes through, if you're looking for a job, they're running them through those resume wizards, and you're like, I've got to have the right words, and I've got to have the right phrasing, and everything's got to be in the right order, and it's a mess, right? But colleges, are still looking at resumes. The way that colleges are doing resumes now, though, it's digital, and basically it's in chunks. It's like, hey, can you tell us a little bit more about your classes that you took? Did you take any AP classes? How many? How did you do in those classes? Now let's talk about your clubs and organizations. Now let's talk about your awards and your honors that you've received. And so you go through in chunks, and you kind of put all that information in. It's a resume dump. So how can a paper resume help your students? First of all, it can help keep them organized, and then it's going to make their college application process and scholarship application process a smoother one, because they'll have all the information in front of them, and then they can just dump it in, right? They can plug and play, as I like to say with a lot of my computer stuff. So you just pull it, you drop it, you're ready to roll. So I think that's great. These are the things you want to focus on when you're helping students with resumes. First of all, education, of course, is going to be very important. If they're comfortable with their GPA and ACT score, go ahead and add it on there. If they are going to put class rank, here's the thing. You have to be able to tell the college how many students are in the class. You can't just say my class rank is 10, because that's an arbitrary number and it tells them nothing. So if you say 10 out of 204, now we know how many people are in the class, and we know that's very good. 10 out of 204 is great. If you say 10 out of 10, you're not doing so hot. So we probably don't want to put class rank on there if we're 10 out of 10. So know how many people are in the class, know where you stand, and if you feel comfortable about it, then put it on there. If not, just leave it off unless you absolutely have to put it. Advanced placement and honors classes, awards and honors. Now what you'll see here, and it starts right here, but it continues down here. We like to call this reverse chronological order. Not we, I mean, everybody calls it that, right? But you want to start with your most recent activities, your students' most recent activities. If they are doing their senior year, of course, they'll start with 12th grade, but start recent and then back it up. So go from 11th all the way down to 9th. And you really want to stick to your high school credentials. I know I have a lot of students that haven't done a ton of stuff in high school, but they're like, I was very involved in middle school. I mean, I guess you can put it on there, but schools and colleges are really looking for 9th to 12th grade. So encourage them to get involved in at least one or two organizations, junior and senior year if they can. I think that's important. Any leadership roles that they've held are going to be very strong for college scholarship opportunities. And then community service is huge. Colleges love community service. They eat community service up. And so your students, this student right here did 720 hours in one place. Here's the thing. If you have a student that they've only done community service at one place, maybe they've done it with their church, and all of their time is spent at that one location. It's only at that one church. And they're like, I mean, I don't want to really put it, or I feel like it's going to look weird that it's just at church. No, not really, because if there's a ton of time in that one place, it shows dedication. And that's a great thing. And so dedication and commitment to the cause is good. And so if you have a lot of hours in one place, don't feel ashamed or shy. Don't let your students feel like, well, I didn't do X, Y, and Z. I didn't do a ton of different community service. I only worked it with my church. Okay, that's great. You still worked with your church. Put it on there, okay? If they do have several hours at lots of different places, then definitely list all of those different things. The most important thing that I see a lot of times with students, it's very vague. Maybe they don't remember where they did it or what they did or how many hours that they did it. If you don't remember your hours, try to give us a time frame of when it happened. Well, I don't remember. I was there for like a couple of hours on a Saturday. It was in November. A couple of hours isn't going to really look good on my resume. Okay, just put like November of whatever year that was. That was my junior year, November 2019. Whatever it is that you can get, just to give the college a good frame of reference of what you've done. Essays, tell a story only you can tell. So essays, if your student is applying to a private school or a selective college, their essay is one of the most important components. It's usually the highest ranked component other than their academic components. So their GPA and their ACT score or SAT score, essay is next. It's the next most important part. And why is that? Essays are so important because it's the student's one chance to let their own voice shine through. Sure, they'll have letters of recommendation sent in, but that's coming from you guys. That's coming from the counselors and the teachers of the world. And so it's still not the student's voice. So the student's essay is the most important part because the student gets a chance to really tell their story, let their voice shine through. And that's the key. It has to be their voice that's shining through. It can't be them trying to portray somebody else or something else. Hey, I'm not the smartest student in the world, but I'm going to pretend to be today. And I'm going to take this 5-letter word and pull out my thesaurus and use a similar word that's 12. Ooh, that's a big word. That looks great. That's not going to work. Okay. If they're not funny, don't try to be funny on your essay. Do what works for you and be yourself. That's the most important thing. And try to hook the reader straight away. Very important. Try to hook the reader straight away because these college recruiters, these admissions counselors, these scholarship committees are reading a ton of essays, sometimes 50 to 60 to 100 a day. And so if you're reading the exact same sentence over and over, why would you like to go to college? I want to go to college to be blank. Who is your role model? My role model is blank. Y'all, how many times can you read that before you're just like, you know what? I don't have the energy for this one. They may have the best essay coming, after that sentence that out of everybody that's applying. But if that's how they start it and they don't really get into the essay until, a little bit down, that person reading it's going to get tired. So you have to try your best to add something catchy at the beginning to at least get them to read your essay. That's the most important thing. All right, so I've covered a lot, and this is all supposed to be about financial aid, and I haven't even gotten to it, so I'm sorry. Here we go. Let's jump into it. I think those are very important components, and that's why I wanted to cover, test scores and essays and resumes, because I think those are extremely important for college scholarship opportunities. And we're going to look at those in just a minute. Before we get into that, let's look at how much college costs. And so this is for the state of Mississippi. I'm sure as counselors, you're aware of what it costs to go to school here. But, in the grand scheme of higher education, it's actually a pretty good value to go to school in the state of Mississippi, even though we're looking at an average, cost of attendance of about $22,000 for a 4-year school. That's still relatively low for a 4-year university experience, especially when you start to get into those private schools and selective colleges. Now, what I will say about the price tag of any school, not just Mississippi schools, of any school, don't let your students be scared away by price tags. If your student is looking at a private school or looking at a selective college that has a $60,000 per year price tag or an $80,000 per year price tag, don't let that scare them away, because those schools operate a little bit differently than our schools. They will have your student fill out the FAFSA, they'll have them fill out the CSS profile, and they'll have what I like to call hidden aid, which is money that the school has, stockpiled that they can kind of, give out to students based on financial need, based on academic merit, based on lots of different factors. And so your student will never even hear about these financial opportunities unless they apply to the college and just see what happens. So don't be scared away by those price tags, because sometimes those schools can come out, you can come out ahead of the game. You can come out better than some of these schools that we're looking at right now. So community college in Mississippi, you're looking at about $3,000 of tuition up to just under $4,000. And then overall cost of attendance, just under $11,000. Public universities in Mississippi, this number is really important right here. So this is the annual tuition, which is anywhere from $7,600 to just under $9,000. But if you haven't heard of the HELP grant, and I hope that everyone on this call has this webinar has heard about the HELP grant, but the HELP grant is an amazing opportunity for low-income students here in the state of Mississippi. And this number right here, this green number, can be completely wiped away if your student is eligible for the HELP grant. So I think that's extremely important. We're going to talk about the HELP grant in detail, in full, in just a minute. But just keep that in mind, that this number, again, don't let that price tag scare your students away, especially your low-income students, because they're sitting here thinking, man, $22,000, I'll never be able to go to X school. You know, I'll never be able to go to Ole Miss. I'll never be able to go to Jackson State. But yes, they can. If they're low income and they get the HELP grant and they get the Pell grant through the federal government, it's going to turn this $22,000 into $3,000 to $4,000. Like, we're going to look at all that, how we can make that work for those students. Okay. So just give us a few minutes and we'll get there. One last thing that I will, no, never mind. I just completely lost train of thought on what I was about to say. If it comes back to me, I'll tell you. Pretend like we just weren't even going to say that. Okay. So we're going to talk about the 4 types of aid. Now we know how much college costs. Now we got to figure out how to pay for it. So we talked about the HELP grant a little bit. That's down here. That's going to be under state aid. We talked about the Pell grant. That's through the federal government. But what about some private scholarships and money that comes from the school itself? So let's look at those first. So first of all, we've got outside aid, or what I like to call private scholarships, or private aid. That just sounds kind of weird. That's why we don't use private aid. We use outside aid. But it's any money that comes outside of the school itself. Another great resource, which Kirsten just dropped in the chat, our website, gettocollege.org/scholarships. We believe we have a great product here at Get to College and Woodward Hines. And so we're going to go ahead and just, throw that at you several times, because we love what we do here and it's all free. Where can you find all these resources for free? And so Get to College is a great resource for you guys. So again, gettocollege.org/scholarships. Now we have these scholarships broken down into several different areas. We have local scholarships based on our outreach centers. So we have a North Mississippi scholarship option. We have a Jackson metro area scholarship page. We have a Mississippi Gulf Coast page. So wherever your students are located, if they're close to one of our centers, there's a good opportunity that they're going to have some local scholarship opportunities. How can you use our website? If you are a counselor and you use Remind 101, or if your school has a counselor's corner on their website, or teachers, if you are using school, I don't know how to use, is it Schoology or Schoology? I don't know how, I don't use it, so I don't know what it is. But if it has some way that you can add resources to it, add our website, add the scholarship page, especially if you're in the DeSoto County or Jackson or Gulf Coast areas. We would love for you to tell your students about those that we know about. Other ways that you can help, think locally first and foremost, because the smaller the applicant pool, the better chance your students have of getting the scholarship. And I know that that's very simplistic in thought process, but I mean, it's true. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So talk to your local businesses, talk to your local business owners, talk to your students, see where they're working. If you have a student that works at Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or Walmart or wherever they may work, see what types of scholarship opportunities those students have, so that you can lift that up to other students and say, hey, look, your classmate over here is working at Chick-fil-A. Listen to what they're going to be able to get. Maybe think about working there, getting a summer job, or what, for future students' sake. Find out what school, local businesses and organizations are doing. We have community organizations listed. I'm in DeSoto County. I told you guys that. The Northwest Community Foundation, we use them for a lot of our scholarship opportunities because they have so many, and they're kind of a great database. If you think outside of locally, if you think, bigger picture, Coca-Cola. I love Coca-Cola's website because their application is closed for this year. So we can't use it this year, but in future years you can. But they have a list of other scholarship websites on theirs as well. So similar to what we have, not only do we have local scholarships on the Get to College website, but we have national databases like FastWeb and Big Future and Scholly. Also, the Coca-Cola website has a list of those. So there's a little overlap, but they're going to have some listed that we don't, and we might have some listed that they don't. So I definitely encourage you to look at that. But think of those big companies, those big corporations, whether it's Coca-Cola or, like I've said, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Walmart, and just see what they've got. Visit their scholarship pages and see if there's anything out there. Online databases, so I mentioned those briefly. FastWeb is very popular. The one thing that I will say about these databases, obviously they're national, sometimes international, and a ton of students are going to be applying for these. So they're hard to get, and it's hit or miss. I mean, what I would always encourage your students to do is apply with a separate email address. Don't apply with your main email account. Maybe you create one specifically for college scholarships, and I would use that to apply for these, because you're going to get inundated with emails. Just like they're going to slam you one email a day, 2 emails a day, and maybe like 3 or 4, depending on how many you've signed up for. It gets crazy and you get tired of seeing them. So I would definitely use a secondary email address. Number 2 is college money that comes directly from the college itself. And we've talked a little bit about this, but merit-based scholarships, based on your ACT score or your SAT score, your academic merit, your GPA. Usually for college scholarships, and I'm going to say this for Mississippi, I would assume it's going to be, for everyone, but for Mississippi, typically you're going to want a 3.0 GPA or higher to start seeing scholarship dollars. So a 3.0 or higher is where your students really want to shoot to achieve. 3.5 and higher is even better, because a lot of these scholarships have tiers and levels. So they may start at a 3.0, but you're really going to get into the better money when you have a 3.5 or higher. So you want to, really encourage your students to, shoot for the moon if they're close already. For your juniors and seniors, if it's your freshmen, they have their whole academic career stress to them how important their GPA is. I know you can tell them that till they're blue in the face and they won't listen to you, but once they get to junior and senior year, they'll realize, oh, she or he was right. So, go ahead and try to stress that importance. What's that look like in Mississippi? So most of our schools start around a 20. Whether it's a junior college or a 4-year institution, most of our schools start around a 20 on the ACT. Now, there are some, Northwest, which is close to me, starts at a 15. So they have what's called their leadership scholarship between a 15 and a 19. Their leadership scholarship starts at half tuition. Presidential scholarship starts at a 20 on the ACT, which is half tuition, and then going up from there. So again, 15 to 19 leadership, 20 and above presidential. So as you can see, ACT score is going to be in certain different levels, kind of like GPA. Holmes Community College, you can get full tuition covered with a 20 on the ACT. Ole Miss doesn't start scholarshiping until a 23. So a 20 does nothing for Ole Miss, but a 23 will get you a scholarship. And so knowing, each of those different schools and what their scholarships are looking like, we have some snapshots of different schools and colleges on our website, or you can go visit each of them. I will tell you this, navigating college websites, admissions websites is a headache. I have worked in this field for, 8 years. I mean, I used to recruit at a school, and I've been with Get to College for 5 years. I still have trouble navigating school websites. So what do? As a simple-minded person, I go to Google and I type in Ole Miss scholarships, or I type in Mississippi State scholarships, freshman scholarships, and that gets the job done. So I would definitely encourage you to use your friend Google. You would be amazed at what Google you wouldn't. Everybody knows about Google now. I'm not telling you anything new there. All right, leadership scholarships. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. Any leadership roles that your students have in clubs and organizations are going to be great. I mean, that's obvious, right? But you definitely want to encourage your students to step up into those roles, even if they're shy or nervous. That could help get a scholarship opportunity. And then community service, I mentioned how big that is. So one scholarship program I want to mention here is Lucky Day. And if you're not familiar with the Lucky Day scholarship program, it's now at 3 of our large institutions in Mississippi. It's at Ole Miss, it's at Mississippi State, and it's at Southern Miss. And the Lucky Day community is wonderful because it's a mentorship program. And so if you have a student that maybe is low income or is nervous about going to college and not having friends or not being able to connect with other people, the Lucky Day scholarship program is going to automatically pair them up with a mentor, an upper class mentor. So from day one at college, they will have someone that they can connect with. And it's going to be an upperclassman who's been doing college and knows what college is all about. And then you can watch your student grow from a mentee to a mentor. As they grow older in the program, they're going to have an opportunity to become a mentor to younger students. It's awesome. It's a great setup. And I love the Lucky Day community for that. But it's going to give them an opportunity to do community service while they're getting that scholarship. They're going to have special housing at most of those schools. So definitely check into the Lucky Day program. It's only for Mississippi residents. So I think that's a great opportunity for your students. Of course, if you have an athlete, they may have opportunities. Art, music, theater, dance, those, band, those things that you have to audition for typically come with a stipend or some sort of scholarship opportunity. So you definitely want to check into those as well and encourage your students to go for those auditions.
Hey, Charlie, we've got a quick question
Sure.
from the group. One of the questions is, do you accept a scholarship to a university? When you do that, does it mean that you have accepted admission to that university?
So scholarships work differently at each school, at each college. But the way generally that it works, when you apply for admission, I would do admissions first. So take care of admissions, then take care of scholarships and financial aid, and then decide on the school that you're going to and take care of housing and make sure all of that is set up. The one school that I would encourage you to apply early to is Mississippi State, because your housing application is time stamped with your admissions application. So your chance of getting into the residence hall of your choice is all dependent on when you applied for admission. So definitely do that early. But a lot of colleges, especially the bigger colleges or the public four-year schools, they're going to have their scholarship applications, their special programs applications locked behind applications. So you have to apply for admission, get accepted, and then as a student at that university, you can apply for scholarship opportunities. Not always. So merit-based scholarships, automatic scholarships based on ACT and GPA, a lot of times once you've been accepted, those will just come to your student. They don't have to apply for anything. They don't have to fill out a separate application. They'll just receive that opportunity. And typically you'll get a letter in the mail and it'll tell your student, hey, this is what you qualify for. But there are competitive scholarships like leadership scholarships and community service scholarships that you have to fill out a separate application for. And typically you will not have an opportunity to do that until you've at least applied to the university and sometimes been accepted. And then once you have your username and password, you can log into that scholarship portal. That's usually how it works with most schools now. Not everybody follows that process. So if there's a school that you can still fill out a paper application for, or you can do the scholarship before admissions, I would say no. That's not accepting your admissions. You still have to fill out an admissions application. You still have to get accepted to the school. Another thing is, keep in mind that these college-based scholarships are specific to the school. So if you get a scholarship at Jackson State University, it will stay at Jackson State University. Even though you get it there and you want to go to Delta State now, you can't take that Jackson State scholarship to Delta State, right? I mean, that's kind of obvious, I know, but sometimes students, think those things. Oh, I can apply to multiple different, I have all this scholarship money, I'll just take it to where I'm going. It doesn't exactly work like that. Yes, private scholarships will follow your student. Yes, federal aid and Mississippi aid will, but these scholarships that are at the school will not. Iris Miles is asking us, why don't all the colleges participate in the Lucky Day Scholarship? I have no idea. That's a great question. I know that, it's a foundation. So I'm sure that the foundation has to set up partnerships with each school and they have to have the money available. So I have no idea, why. I don't know if Kirsten or Shannon have any intel to that, but I'm not sure exactly why it's not at every single school. And I don't know the history to Lucky Day, but yeah. So since it is a foundation, like I said, that they have to set those partnerships up. And it's growing. I was at Southern. I went to Southern Miss. We've had Lucky Day for years. Mississippi State has just now gotten Lucky Day in the past couple of years. So I think it is growing, and I don't know if we'll see it at every school or if it'll just stay where it's at. I'm not sure. Phi Theta Kappa. So if your students are thinking junior college, if they're thinking about going to community college, please encourage them to keep their grades up and to do some community service while they're there, because they'll have an opportunity to join Phi Theta Kappa. Now, you don't have to have much service to join, but you will have to have some service hours to keep status in Phi Theta Kappa. But what is Phi Theta Kappa? So PTK is an honor society at junior colleges across the United States. It's actually an international international program. Couldn't think of the word I wanted to there. but it's an international program, and it's the cream of the crop for transfer students. So if your student has a chance to get into Phi Theta Kappa, if they get invited, please, please, please encourage them to join, because there's some really big scholarship opportunities at each school and each college, in Mississippi especially. So, Ole Miss and Mississippi State give like $6,000 to $8,000. I mean, you could have at least half of your tuition covered, or sometimes at some schools, all of your tuition covered by your Phi Theta Kappa scholarship alone, plus any other money that you might be eligible for. And yeah, so this is an international program, and they're headquartered here in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi. And they also have some great scholarship opportunities. So if you have any transfer students, maybe you have some students that have already, gone to school, gone to college, maybe they reach back out to you. I don't know how often that happens, but if you ever have a student reach out to you, just know that Phi Theta Kappa has some scholarship search engines as well, on their website. So PTK Connect is one of those. And there's another one, maybe PTK Edge. One of them, you have to be a Phi Theta Kappa member. The other one, you do not. You just have to be a transfer student. So it's a great resource, PTK Connect, look that up. So you can check that out. But like I said, big scholarship opportunities. I had an opportunity to join Phi Theta Kappa. I'm very proud of that I was invited, because I had a good GPA. I'm not proud of the fact that I did not join, because I didn't really know what it was. I was like, I'm not joining some stupid honor society. So when I got to Southern Miss, I missed out on my PTK scholarship. Still upsetting to this day, but now I get to tell students my story. It's very empowering. So there you go. All right, we got a couple more before we wrap up here. Federal aid is through the FAFSA, right? So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. The main three things that the FAFSA is going to help your students with is determining if they're eligible for the Pell Grant, if they're eligible for work-study positions on college campuses, and if they can take out student loans. Spoiler alert, everybody can take out student loans. And the maximum a freshman can take out is $5,500. No one really wants to take out student loans, but honestly, more and more students are having to. I mean, we all know about the student loan debt and the crisis that it's creating in our country. We just did a Facebook Live on student loans with my coworker Brandy. So definitely go to our Facebook and check that out, because it talks a little bit more about student loans. And mentioning that, we have a ton of Facebook Lives that we've been doing all year long since the pandemic started. So each week we cover a different topic of the college process, whether it's starting with admissions or it's financial aid, or breaking it into each of the 4 types of aid that we've talked about today. We have shorter videos on each of those. So definitely check out our Facebook page for lots of other information. We try to get these all on different avenues. We just had a quick question on Facebook this morning I saw, where a parent or a counselor was saying, hey, can we share this on YouTube, because I can't get this to my students from Facebook. Well, all of our Facebook Lives have been converted to YouTube videos as well. So we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. However you need to get that information to your students, we're trying to give you that accessibility as best we can. So, all right, the Pell Grant is going to be for low-income students, so it is income-based. And then work study positions are first come, first serve. I usually always tell students to say yes, unless you're an athlete or you already have a job off campus, or you just know you're not going to work on campus. Say yes to the work study question to see if you're eligible. Otherwise, I mean, it's just a waste of a question on the FAFSA. So say yes to it. Give yourself that opportunity to see if you're eligible. It all is going to open up October 1st of your senior year. It's based on prior year's taxes. So this year we're using 2019 taxes. And it's open right now. So we're helping seniors every single day with the FAFSA. We want to get those FAFSA numbers up. So counselors, push your students to us to help them with that. We know it's a tough process to do on their own. So we want to help make it as easy as possible. So I'm seeing Shannon drop some loan interest rates for you guys. Here they are right here. And you're going to get the lowest interest rates if you go through the federal government. I mean, if you fill out your FAFSA, you're going to get great interest rates. Can you go through a third-party private lender? Yes. But to tell you a story here, I just met with a family a couple of weeks ago. They had gone through a private lender. They were having all kinds of issues getting the school to accept that private lender or that third-party lender. and there was some kind of paperwork that needed to be done. They didn't know where to find it, and they just couldn't figure it out. And they had a good interest rate. I can't remember what it was, but those private third-party loan lenders can go, those interest rates can go from 3% to next year. It could be 19% or 23%. They jump it up really high, and you never know what you're going to get. It's variable. Whereas here with the federal government, it's going to be a fixed interest rate, and you're going to get it locked in pretty low. This is amazing. Like 2.75%, y'all. My student loans were 6% and 8%. So I'm super jealous of students these days. And I know it's not fun to take out loans. I encourage students to only take out what they need. Don't take out more than you need. I just finished paying off my student loans. I've been telling students for years I was going to throw a big party. It just so happens that it was in 2020, so I can't have a big party for my student loan payoff. I was going to invite all kinds of people. It was going to be amazing. All of you could have come, but now we can't. So, student loans just screwing me over one more time, right? It's off. Everything's fine. All right. One more thing here, Mississippi Aid. We have 3 grants to the state of Mississippi: MTAG, MESG, and HELP. And so these are only for Mississippi institutions. So your students that are Mississippi residents that are thinking about going out of state, show this to them and encourage them. I always encourage students, have one school in the state of Mississippi that you're applying for. That's all I ask, one school in the state of Mississippi. And that way you can see if you're eligible for any of these 3. MTAG and MESG, both of these have no income component. It doesn't matter how much your family makes. You could be eligible for these if you have the test score and the GPA. So MTAG, a 15 on the ACT, a 2.5 GPA, you're going to get $500 for your first 2 years of school, each of those first 2 years, $1,000 for junior year, $1,000 for senior year. So $3,000 over 4 years. MESG, the Mississippi Eminent Scholars Grant, you're looking at a 29 on the ACT, a little bit tougher to achieve, a 3.5 GPA with that, and that's going to get you $2,500 for each of your 4 years of school. So $10,000 over 4 years. And then lastly is the HELP grant. I mentioned it earlier. Here's what you need. You need a 20 on your ACT. You need a 2.5 GPA. You need to take the correct classes. Oh, and yeah, there's an income requirement. There's an income component. So that's the most important part. It doesn't matter if your student has everything else. If they don't meet the income component, they won't get it. But for those students that do meet the income component, what is it? The HELP grant starts at $39,500. That's the baseline. Your student's household has to be at or below $39,500. For each brother and sister under the age of 21, we're going to add $5,000 to the total. It gets kind of complicated, I understand, but Kirsten has dropped the link for you guys from our website to Mississippi Aid. So go check out the details on our website. What does the HELP grant get your student? So if they can get to that 20, they have the 2.5, they've taken the right classes and their household meets the income, we're looking at full tuition and any required fees at any public school in Mississippi. Any public school in Mississippi. I did not say at any community college in Mississippi. I did not say at any university in Mississippi. I said any public school in Mississippi, 2-year or 4-year. Now, the private schools, so your Millsaps and your Mississippi colleges and Rusts of the world, those you're looking at the nearest public school, a discounted rate. So you're going to get up to the nearest public school. For instance, William Carey is in Hattiesburg. The closest public school that they would use, I'm assuming, would be the University of Southern Mississippi. And you would get the cost of Southern Miss's tuition, and then whatever else William Carey cost is going to be up to the student to cover. So that's how the HELP grant works. That's the special circumstances for private. Application deadline is March 31st. And then any documents that need to be submitted, this is especially important for counselors. You guys need to make sure you have everything else submitted by April 30th. And so what do you have to submit? Their electronic grade sheet, their ACT scores. Those are the things that counselors, and you have to verify their core curriculum. And you guys know about that. If you're a counselor, you know what you need to do. If you're not familiar with that, if you're a brand new counselor, definitely reach out to us or reach out to the Mississippi office, which is MOSFA, Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid, so that we can help get you set up, make sure that your portal is working, and we can get everything taken care of for submitting those documents for students, because we don't want to miss that. I mean, this is game changing. So we want to make sure that students receive this. I didn't tell you how much the Pell Grant is, but the Pell Grant's going to be about $6,000, a little bit over $6,000 if they get the maximum amount. You add that to full tuition, we're really making changes in these schools, right? So if I'm going to use Ole Miss as a reference, if Ole Miss cost $25,000, that's for everything that you could possibly spend. $9,000 of that is going to be tuition, covered. $6,000 of that you can use for Pell Grant, covered. So now we've taken a $25,000 school, we've knocked off $15,000 of it. You can take out student loans. I know that's not great, but if they have at least 20, maybe they can get to a 23 or 24, get an extra $1,000 or $2,000. You're starting to see how it can make schools way more affordable. One last thing I'm going to say, and this is specific to Ole Miss since I just mentioned them. Ole Miss has a program called Ole Miss Opportunity. And if your student's income is even lower than Help Grant range, so the cutoff for Ole Miss Opportunity is $32,500. So if they're under that amount, Ole Miss will cover their tuition, their room, and give them allowance for meals. That's all your big stuff, y'all. I mean, yes, you still have to buy your textbooks. Yes, you may have to buy some other small fees along the way. You'll know how college is, and we get nickel and dimed here and there. Tuition, room, meal plans. Yes, please, sign me up. But here's the thing. The catch is you have to attend Ole Miss as a freshman. You have to live on campus. And some students may not be ready for that. So I always hear students say, I'm going where the money is. And that's great. But if you're not ready for that school, then don't go there. Because my job at Get to College, my job is to set a student up for success. And if a student is not ready to go to Ole Miss, but they get the Ole Miss Opportunity, so the money's there, and they fail out first semester, have I really set them up for success? Sure, they got a free semester of school, but now their GPA is busted. It's going to be really hard for them to transfer to other schools and to get back on track. I really haven't done my job of setting them up for success. So yes, you do want to go where the money is, but that's not always the most important factor. That's not the only factor at play. So we really have to look at everything. It's a comprehensive list. I could talk about this for days. I'm not going to. My job was to talk about financial aid today. But just know if your students ever have questions, if they ever need to sit down and talk to somebody, we're here. We're available. Get to College is your resource. It's your students' resource as well. For Mississippi Aid, students have to take 15 credit hours each semester. They have to take and pass. And one of the most important things is only one school can go on your Mississippi application. So yes, it will follow them to whatever school they go to, but you have to make sure that the school they attend is listed on their Mississippi application, or else that aid's going to get canceled. So just make sure that if they were signed up to go to Ole Miss and then they switched and out of the blue and then they decided to go to Alcorn State, we have to make sure Alcorn is on the Mississippi application, or else it'll get canceled. Okay, I've done that. I've done my job today and talked about financial aid. Please feel free to ask me any questions. I'm going to stay on for a little while. This is a checklist. If you want to take a pic real quick with your phone of a little bit of everything with the college process, not just financial aid. So feel free to take a quick snapshot. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, it wasn't quite 10. And we have a text messaging campaign. So please feel free to sign your students up or encourage them to sign up for our text messaging service. This is actually, we're going to be switching this a little bit to a new format, a new program. So stay tuned on our text messaging because this may switch up just a little bit in the future. But thank you guys so much. Kirsten and Shannon, thanks for having me today to talk about all this information. You've got my information here on the screen. You've got the North Mississippi Get to College phone number. Please take that down. Let me know if you ever need me for anything. And again, thank you guys so much for letting me be here and share this information for you guys. I'm going to pass it back over to Kirsten and Shannon.
All right. So, thank you, Charlie. As always, you're lots of fun and we love to hear you present. And there was lots of great information there for our teachers and counselors. For all of you watching, we will email you the recording for this webinar in the next couple of days, and we'll post it to our YouTube channel. We would appreciate it if you would complete the short survey that will automatically pop up at the end of the meeting. Please fill it out and give us any feedback on today's webinar so that we can keep improving. Kirsten, I'll stop at this point and just make sure that there were no other questions that popped up during the webinar that we didn't address.
We had one that just asked clarification about the help grant, how many years, semesters, but that's been answered. So we're good to go.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure everybody's questions had been answered. So stay tuned for our last Topic Tuesday webinar for the fall semester, which will be held on Tuesday, December the 8th. If you have participated in this webinar series and participated in 5 webinars this fall, you will have the opportunity to apply for 0.5 CEUs. And if you have participated in all 10 webinars, you will have the opportunity to apply for 1 full CEU. Also, we wanted to let you know that we will be continuing Topic Tuesday webinars this spring with a whole new set of topics. So Kirsten and I have been working on those topics, and registration for these spring webinars will be listed on our website very soon. These webinars will be listed under the Educator tab and then choose Professional Development. While you're there registering, please check out the other resources for you and your students listed under that Educator tab. So just to review, our last one is December 8th, and it's going to be on counselor recommendation letters. So I'm sure as these letters are coming into you from students, you will want to hear from our presenters about that. So also wanted to let you know that there are a few other training opportunities coming up for this fall. College and career readiness teacher chats have been very popular this fall, and we have one this week, and then we'll continue those into the spring. So if you want to register for those, get on our website and do that. And like I said earlier, those spring webinar topics will be out very, very soon. So we hope that all of you will return with us in the spring for Topic Tuesday, and that you will pass the word along to your other colleagues so they can join us in the spring. All right, well, that is it for today. Here is our contact information. Charlie gave you the South Haven office, but here is the other, offices. Here, our Jackson office and our Gulf Coast office. Also remember that we are working with students virtually. Tell your students to call, or you can call on their behalf and get them in, especially if they still need to complete their FAFSA or their Mississippi Aid application. We are doing those all virtual. So you don't have to have a FAFSA day scheduled with our offices to do that. You can just have your students call individually and set up those appointments. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Topic Tuesday on December 8th.